Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. The Venom hype train just keeps on rolling ahead of tomorrow's Symbiotic Relationships panel at San Diego Comic-Con. Earlier today, Entertainment Weekly surprised us with a brand new look at Venom in Marvel Spider-Man 2, alongside an article that provides so many great new details about this classic villain, and we are going to break all of this down for you. But first, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that, just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It will notify you every single time that Andreas and I upload. Now, with that out of the way, Andreas, let's break down some new Venom details.
Alright guys, so today we're going to be walking through this article that we received from Entertainment Weekly. The title of the article is Smile for Venom, Marvel Spider-Man 2 team previews their spin on a classic villain. This article coming just ahead of the Venom panel that will be unveiled at SDCC, and so as you all know, it is Venom Week here, and so we were expecting some Venom details to arise, and so this article is going to be right along that same vein. And before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of the article, Nick, one thing that I'd like to hit on first is this beautiful picture of Venom at the top of the article. This, of course, is a new picture of Venom. Few people saying that this is from in-game. Nick, what say you? Do you think this is an in-game screenshot? And more importantly, what do you think of this picture? How badass is it?
Yeah, I can't tell if this is in-game or concept art, but it looks really, really freaking good, and Venom's design looks incredible. This, for me, has to be one of the best-looking Venoms we've ever gotten. Like, it just hits all of the right chords for me. He looks incredibly cool. He looks dangerous. He looks violent. He looks terrifying. It's like everything you would want out of your Venom to look like is what we're getting from Marvel Spider-Man 2. Now, one thing I do notice in the background, and a few people have pointed this out, is those look like the same trucks that Kraven was using that we saw in the gameplay reveal trailer. So it makes me wonder a couple different things here. Is Venom and Kraven working together? Is this when, like, Kraven and his guys have Venom surrounded and contained and they're going at each other? Like, what exactly is the context of this picture here? Because I think there are a lot of different scenarios that could go in wildly different avenues and directions.
Yeah, I really love this take on Venom here. Just a great look, and I'm wondering, from looking at it, you know, how edited it might be from in-game footage. If this is a cutscene, obviously, like, doesn't look like gameplay to me, but whatever it is, Nick, this is a really cool look for Venom, and it really harps on the whole horror, terrifying aspect of Venom, in my opinion, and we're gonna get more of that as we do go through the article. They specifically do touch on the aspects of an overwhelming and horrific Venom, so we're gonna break that down in just a bit. But Nick, do you want to kick us off with some highlights here?
Yeah, I sure do. So I really want to focus in on the quotes that we get from this article. A lot of the non-quote, just text portions of this article are just describing things that we already know and just kind of contextualizing where we are at with Marvel Spider-Man 2 as far as the story and the release and all of that kind of stuff. So I really want to hone in on some of the quotes that we get from some of the game devs and directors over at Insomniac. So the first thing I want to start with is this quote from Brian Intihar, where he says, "Everything we talked about with Venom, that sense of strength, that sense of fear, that sense of overwhelming, so different from Peter." Tony, that being the voice actor for Venom, he's talking about Tony Todd. The beginning portion of this article talks about why they chose to cast him and how that whole process went down. But he says Tony embraces that completely in the performance. And this, Andreas, highlights exactly what you're talking about and what we're seeing from this picture. That sense of strength, fear, overwhelming. Just from this screenshot alone, I am terrified of this Venom and what he's going to do to us.
Yeah, and I think on that same vein, Nick, you mentioned the beginning of the article that talks about the selection of Tony Todd, and one point in that section of this article is that he was selected for his past portrayal of Candyman, which is a horror icon. And so it looks like they were looking for someone who can give a horrific timbre and tone to the Venom voice, something that is, like you said, Nick, overwhelming and has a sense of strength and fear. And so it looks like they're really trying to play that aspect of Venom up in this game, which is something that we've talked about in recent weeks with, for example, the Spidey sense ability perhaps not working when you're opposing Venom, adding into that sense of fear factor that Venom can have in this game, knowing that you might not be able to counter his strikes and he might, sneak attack you. And so this really does play into that it could be a very intense interaction when you do end up being face-to-face with Venom in this game. Now, the next quote is from senior art director Jacinda Chu, who says, "It's really interesting when you start thinking about what makes him different than Spider-Man. The symbiote is often known as an allegory for the darkness that the host is fighting against. So what makes him an anti-Spider-Man?" And this, I think, Nick, really starts to spark a conversation about the darkness within Peter in this particular story. And I'm really interested to see how they take this and how this is going to shed new light on the Peter Parker that we know from the Insomniac Spider-Verse.
Yeah, and we've heard Yuri Lowenthal himself talk about his portrayal with the symbiote suit and how it will take advantage of that aggressiveness and that other personality side of Peter in this game. And here we're getting kind of that same type of description when it comes to Venom, that it just takes advantage of that darkness within whoever is the host of Venom. And I like how in this article they're careful to step around, hinting as to who the possible host for Venom is in this game. Like, the PR team that vetted these quotes did a great job of making sure that they did not tip us off at all as to who could possibly be the host for Venom in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Now, the next quote I want to focus in on is a couple paragraphs down. They just kind of, throughout this article here, contextualize where we're at in the story, the post-credit scenes from the previous two games, kind of how we got to where we get to. And this next quote is from Intihar, where he says, "We wanted to try something very different, and I don't think you can get much more different from Doc Ock than you do Venom. It's about power, it's about strength, it's about being slighted. It's about Peter being involved with much more in the creation of Venom." I think that's what attracted us. I think there are a lot of interesting things to take from this quote, Andreas. First off, that when they were going into Marvel Spider-Man 2, they were looking to do something that was completely different than the villains they did in Spider-Man 1. And they found that Venom was the polar opposite on that spectrum when it comes to the tone of the villain, the style of the villain, his intentions, what he's trying to accomplish. And that's where they arrived on Venom. And the other one here is, it's about being slighted. It's about Peter being involved much more in the creation of Venom. I think that is such an interesting quote because I think that can mean a lot of different things. It's about being slighted. Is he talking about the host for the symbiote? He feels slighted by Peter. He feels slighted by Spider-Man. Or is he talking about the symbiote itself? Because we know the symbiote feels that way. It feels abandoned by Peter canonically when he removes the symbiote from him. And that is one of the main reasons that the symbiote does not like Spider-Man, because he feels like Peter slighted him and that he doesn't deserve him. So I think that is a very interesting quote. And here, where he talks about being much more involved in the creation of Venom. I don't think he's talking about like the creation of the symbiote itself, because I still think the symbiote is going to be alien in nature and not lab created. Again, we don't know for sure yet. I have a feeling we might know more about this by the end of this panel, but I think he's talking about what Spider-Man and what Peter does over the course of the story that forces the host and forces the symbiote to become the Venom that it becomes in this game, and how the actions of Peter have grave consequences in this game.
Yeah, Nick, this quote is beautifully vague because, like you said, it can give rise to all sorts of interpretations. I'm really liking your interpretations of the latter half of the quote. For me, like, the most interesting part of this is, like you were saying, Peter being involved much more in the creation of Venom. Would love to know what you guys in the comments down below think about that particular phrase. I know there's probably many different interpretations, many different ways to skin this cat. So let us know your interpretations of that particular part of this quote, because I do think that is so very interesting for a discussion. But kind of moving on to the latter part of this quote, which is from Paquette. It says, one of the things that is great about Spider-Man as a character is he's always got to make sacrifices. The symbiote provides a lot of grist for that mill, so to speak. Very interesting saying. And then Paquette continues saying, what happens when that darkness takes over? It's not just Peter who's impacted by the symbiote, it's the loved ones and the family around the host who has to see what's happening to the person that they love. There's a lot of juicy drama that we can get from that. And I love that they're really honing in on this aspect of the story. It's something that we really saw that was leaned into with Tobey Maguire's portrayal of Peter Parker being influenced by the symbiote, and I'm thinking that they're going to go along that same road where we are going to get like like Yuri Lowenthal was saying, a bully Lowenthal here, and we're going to see how that's going to impact his relationships with his friends, with his family, with his loved ones, and it's going to add for a lot of interesting tension throughout this game. And I'm really interested to see how particularly this is going to play out with his relationship with Miles, because of course we know that there are two main protagonists for this game, and the relationship between Miles and Peter is a really interesting one, and I'd love to see how it's really stretched in all sorts of directions by the influence of the symbiote in this game.
What I love about this quote is how it tries to tip us off or make us believe here, by the way it's written, that Peter is the host for Venom, because it talks about it's not just the Peter who's impacted by the symbiote, and not just impacted at like the host that's impacted in the darkness taking over. And it feels like this paragraph was written and this quote was given as like a sort of bait and switch to maybe like, hey, maybe they're tipping us off here that Peter is actually Venom in this game this entire time. But I really think they're talking about here in this instance when he has the symbiote suit and not Venom at the very end of this game, the Venom we see in that shot. I still don't think that's going to be Peter. I think that would be completely crazy if Peter just evolves from just having the symbiote suit into a full-fledged Venom. That would be insane. Like, if you wanted an original take on Venom, that's one way you can certainly do it and make the stakes for Spider-Man 3 insane. But I just like the kind of bait and switch going on with some of these quotes and some of these paragraphs in this article. I really like that. I like that it allows us to speculate different things. So I just want to finish off with a couple more quotes. We have one again from Chu and then one from Brian Intihar. Here we have Chu talking about how there are specific story details that had a direct impact on the character's design. She says, one of the challenges we had throughout production was, how much does Venom talk? I remember we did some concepts early on. Does Venom have lips? Does he laugh? Does he smile? Does he frown? It's a fine line between making this creature scary and intimidating, but then also, I guess, relatable. So here we get some insight into what was going on in the minds of the dev team over Insomniac when they were actually designing Venom himself, the look of Venom, and kind of balancing what his intentions are, but also making him relatable, but also trying to get their intentions in there of wanting to make him scary, intimidating, threatening. So just a great look into the insight of Insomniac as they were developing the look for Venom. And then the final quote here is again from Brian Intihar, and he says, for us, Venom is the host plus the symbiote. You don't get Venom without both of them being bonded together. What Tony represents is that bond. I think if anything, casting Tony made us feel more confident in the visual design of the character. So just a nice little quote to finish us out from Brian Intihar with some more insight as to why they decided to cast Tony Todd in this role. But I think what's interesting here is, for us, Venom is the host plus the symbiote. You don't get Venom without both of them being bonded together. So to me, this means that Insomniac is really going to be trying to find that balance of the intentions of how the host of Venom feels and the intentions of what the symbiote is trying to accomplish, and how those two are able to interact together and combine together, and just kind of see what comes from having two perhaps hosts and a symbiote with different intentions, and just how they kind of operate together throughout the story of this game.
And what this tells me, Nick, is that Insomniac is not going to play it lazy when it comes to developing the motives and intentions of the host himself or herself, whoever this host ends up being. Of course, we know that this is very much a question that is still up in the air in this game. We do have some question marks answered, and by way of, is this going to be Eddie Brock? Insomniac maintaining that it will not be Eddie Brock, but whoever it ends up being, I'm really interested to see how Insomniac fleshes out the character and then in turn shows how that is amplified, and the darkness of that character is amplified by Venom when it does flourish into the full Venom form that we are seeing with this beautiful picture of Venom that we're seeing. And on that note, guys, Venom Week is in full swing. I'm so excited to see how this panel is going to play out and what Insomniac does choose to show us about Venom. I'm really hoping that maybe we even get to see some Venom gameplay come out to the general public from this panel. So keep your eyes peeled for any news as we do get close to that panel, because rest assured, guys, we will be covering anything and everything out of Insomniac games that will be releasing out of SDCC, so stay tuned to the channel for all of that news. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for this discussion. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.